Hi everyone, this is Mohammed Kubaib. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about Azure Virtual Machine Service Availability Set and Availability Zone in Azure Cloud. If you find this video useful, please subscribe and hit the bell icon for the future updates. And if you wanted to learn more about Azure or Azure Virtual Desktop or Citrix Virtual Desktop, you can check out my Udemy bestseller course. The link for the Udemy course has been given in the description of this video.
So Azure Virtual Machine Service, it provides on-demand and scalable computing resource with usage-based pricing. So it means this is the service. It will help us to create virtual machines in Azure, and we need to pay as per the usage. So when we deploy any virtual machine in Azure, by default you will have a 99.9% availability. So it means you have 0.1% downtime. So it means if you calculate for 1 week, you'll have a 10 minutes downtime. And if you calculate it for a month, it will be 43 minutes downtime you have if you deploy any VMs in Azure. So some workloads which doesn't afford the downtime, so they can choose something called availability set. So availability set is a logical grouping of two or more VMs that help you to keep the application hosted in Azure and available during planned and unplanned maintenance. So if you use availability set to host your VMs, then you may have only 5 minutes of downtime per week, which means 99.95% uptime you have. It means only 0.05% downtime you will have, and monthly you will have only 21 minutes of downtime. So even some of your application like core banking or such highly critical application, 21 minutes is a still very high downtime. So even now you can use something called availability zone. So when you use availability zone, you will get SLA of 99.99%. It means you will have only downtime of 0.01%. It means only 1 minutes per week, and if you calculate it for a month, you'll have only 4.32 minutes of downtime per month. So this is related to availability zone and availability set. Let's go back to our whiteboard and we will discuss in details how this availability set and availability zone works. As we discussed, when you deploy any VMs in Azure, by default you will get 99.9% uptime. So it means you'll have only 10 minutes of downtime per week and 43 minutes of downtime per month. The reason for this 10 minutes downtime is when you deploy any VM in Azure, so this VM may get deployed in one of the server in your Azure data center. For example, this is the Azure data center. So in the Azure data center you'll have a rack. So inside rack you will have a server. On this server you'll have this particular virtual machine might get created. So if there is any maintenance on this rack or in this server, then your VM will get impacted. And let's say if you are doing any patch updates on this server or any network switch maintenance on this rack or power maintenance in this rack, so your VMs will get impacted, and that is the reason you may have 10 minutes per week or 43 minutes per month downtime. So some applications, mission critical application doesn't afford this 43 minutes downtime per month. So to avoid this, Microsoft come up with option called availability set. So availability set will provide you 99.95% uptime. It means only 5 minutes of downtime per week and only 21 minutes of downtime per month. So how availability set works means, let's say you have 5 VMs, critical virtual machines on which your application is running. Either it may be a banking application or any mission critical applications. So now when you enable availability set or when you use availability set, so let's say in Azure data center you have a racks. So this is called as fault domain, FD. The racks often called as fault domain, and then we have update domain. So you may have maximum of 3 fault domain and 20 update domain in Azure data center. So update domain is nothing but you can say servers. So you may have from 1 to 20 update domains. So when you deploy your VM, let's say you're going to deploy 3 VMs or 5 or 10 VMs for your application in Azure, and when you choose availability set, so the first VM it may get created in this update domain, and the second one it may get created over here, third one it may get created over here, fourth one again it may get created over here. So similarly it will distribute your VMs across update domains and fault domains. So let's imagine you have some issues on your rack. For example, this rack goes down, then still your other virtual machines are available because it is distributed across the other racks and other servers. So even though, let's imagine if your one update domain, that is one server, goes down also, then you still have other VMs available across other update domains and fault domain. So that when you use availability set, even your rack goes down, also even if your particular server or update domain goes down, still you have other VMs available across other fault domain and update domain to take the load from the user or from the application, so that your application or your virtual machines is available most of the time. That is the reason you will get 99.95% uptime. So it means only 5 minutes downtime you'll have, and if you calculate it for 1 month, you'll have only 21 minutes of downtime per month. So using availability set, you can achieve high availability to your virtual machines so that you can avoid downtime. So when you consider availability set, this update domain and fault domain, it's all part of same data center, same Microsoft data center. If this data center goes down, then all your VMs will be down and your application won't work and you will have a complete outage. To overcome from this problem, Microsoft has introduced availability zone. So to understand availability zone, first we need to understand what is zone and what is region. So in Azure we have a region. For example, we have central US, and then we have west US, and then we have east US. These are all considered as regions. So within the region, we have zones. We'll have 3 zones: zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. Zone is nothing but an individual data center within the same region, but separated by some distance. Let's say zone 1 and zone 2, this will have distance 20 km, and zone 2 and zone 3 this may have a distance of 30 km, etc. So now, even though if your one zone goes down completely, that is even if your one data center goes completely, still you will have another 2 data centers. So this is how zone and region will come in picture in Azure. Let's say you want to deploy multiple VMs. For example, you want to deploy 10 VMs. So how we can deploy these 10 VMs across the availability zone and how we can achieve maximum availability. For example, when you select availability zone while deploying the 10 VMs, you will have an option to deploy these 10 VMs across the zones. This is zone 1, this is zone 2, this is zone 3. If you deploy 4 VMs in zone 1 and 3 VMs in zone 2 and 3 VMs in zone 3, then even if one zone goes down, still you have two zones to respond for your user request. Similarly, even the second zone goes down, still you have a single zone available to respond to your user load. So this is how you can have a maximum availability when you choose availability zone to deploy your VMs, and this will provide a SLA of 99.99%, which means only 0.01% downtime, that is 1 minutes in a week and only 4 minutes in the month. So this is the beauty of availability zone. So when it comes to Azure virtual desktop, let's say you wanted to deploy 1000 VMs. So if you choose availability zone, you can choose to deploy your VMs across multiple zones. Let's say in first zone you will deploy 300 VMs, in the second one you will deploy another 300, and the third one you will deploy another 400. So even one or two fails, still you have a VDIs available for your users, so that it will also act as a disaster recovery for your VDI infrastructure, because you no need to keep another region to run your DR workloads. So in the production workload itself, you can choose availability zone to distribute your VDI workloads.
Let's see how to deploy Azure Virtual Desktop in availability zone. So we need to go to the Azure Virtual Desktop blade. Here we need to click our host pool, and under the host pool we need to create a new host pool. Let's select the resource group over here, and we are going to give a name for the host pool as AZHP. So then we are going to select the region, which is Central US, and then we will click on host pool type as pooled, as well as the maximum session limit as 5, and we'll click on next. Here we need to mention add Azure virtual machines, yes, and then here we need to give the naming convention. I'm going to give AZAVD as a naming convention, and I will keep the virtual machine location as it is, which is Central US, and here we need to select availability zone. So here, let's say if you are going to deploy 100 VMs, so if you select on zone 1, zone 2 and zone 3, so these 100 VMs are distributed across 3 zones. For example, first zone may have 40 VMs, and the second one may have 30, and third one may have another 30. However, if you select only one, so all the 100 VMs are going to deploy in a single availability zone, so it does not give any resiliency in case of zone failure. So always make sure you spread your virtual machines across zone for the high availability and disaster recovery purpose, and also it will give you SLA of 99.99%. In the earlier version of Azure Virtual Desktop Portal, this option was not there. At a time you have to deploy virtual machine in only one zone. For example, if you wanted to deploy 100 virtual machines, so in the first batch you need to select zone 1 only and deploy 40 VMs, and run this wizard once again and select zone 2 and then deploy 30, and the third deployment you need to select zone 3 and mention 30 VMs. So you need to deploy your virtual machine 3 times using the wizard. However, with the new feature related to the availability zone, they made it easy so that in a single deployment you can deploy your virtual machine across 3 zones. So here in this example I am going to select all the zones, and then under image I am going to select a multi-session Windows 11 image, and here number of VMs I am going to select 3 VMs, so that all the 3 VMs will be spread across 3 availability zones. So virtual network, I'm going to select my VNet, and I'm not going to select any security group over here because I already have a security group in my subnet. So under Active Directory, I'll keep as Active Directory itself. Then I'm going to enter my domain credential for the domain join. To specify the domain, that is VDIBuzz in my case. If you wanted to specify OU, you can specify over here, or else it will create it in a default OU. So here we need to select our local admin credential for the virtual machines and then click on next. Here I'm going to create a new workspace and then click on review and create. So it will review, and if everything is fine, it will allow us to create the host pool. The validation is passed, so now we can create our host pool. The deployment is completed. Now if I go to the virtual machine blade, I can see 3 virtual machines, which is AVD 0, 1 and 2. So if I open this virtual machine blade, I can see the first virtual machine, which is AVD 0, which is deployed in availability zone 1. And if I go to the second virtual machines, I can see it is deployed in availability zone 2. Similarly, the third virtual machine, which is deployed in availability zone 3. It means all 3 virtual machine which got distributed across the data center. So even if there is a single data center failure, then still we have 2 more virtual machines which is deployed in another 2 zones or data centers. This is how, even if it is a disaster in one particular data center region, only 1/3 of the user will get impacted, remaining 2/3 users will have no issues. And this is the beauty of availability zones, and it is highly recommended to use availability zone if you are planning critical applications or Azure Virtual Desktop hosting the critical applications. Thank you for watching my video.